There we go.
You're breaking up, Maddie.
Oh, can you not hear me?
You're kind of like choppy on my end.
You're good on my end.
He's
Okay.
clear to me.
Sometimes our own internet is slow, so I do the best I can. My headset died this morning. Well,
If it gets too loud for you guys, my oxygen is a little bit low, so I had to put my oxygen on.
Well, that's a good point. I actually mute everybody, so that was my next thing. So we won't worry about it. All right, so everybody is muted except for me. So thank you for being here today at our 1 p.m. event for the Lighthouse. Today, we are going to start our conversation off with Elliot. Elliot is going to tell us a little bit about pulling up a podcast on smart devices. So Elliot.
So hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. So does everyone know what a podcast is?
I muted everybody. Hold on, let me unmute. Okay.
I usually
are
unmuted.
Just as a little warning, if there's a lot of audio feedback, I do mute you again, so don't take offense. I'm sorry.
Nope. No.
Meeting mute. Currently unmuted button.
Okay. So a podcast is essentially a talk show or a talk radio show, except instead of going out over AM or FM radio, it's distributed through the internet. So there are basically podcasts about any topic that you could think of. And so we have a podcast about assistive technology.
Yeah, so many people on it's muted now. It's muted. So they can't hear us right now.
And so we have a podcast about assistive technology. And there's a number of ways that you can access a podcast. One of the most popular ways of accessing is by using a podcast app. So most smartphones have podcast apps preloaded on them. Most Android phones do have, most Android phones come with now Google Podcasts. You can get that from the Google Play Store if your phone does not have that. All iPhones come preloaded with Apple Podcasts. And so you can use that app to find and subscribe to podcasts. And so when you're listening to a podcast, and if it's something that you want to listen to often, you usually subscribe to it. Now, that does not mean that you're going to be paying anything to hear it. Podcasts are free, although in the last few weeks and months, there's some that are starting to charge, but for the most part, all podcasts are free. And there might be ads. Ours does not have ads. So you can use that podcast app to subscribe to a particular podcast. You can search for topics. So there's, like I said, there's podcasts on pretty much every topic you can think of, from sewing to cooking to assistive technology like we have. So there's pretty much everything from space exploration, science, politics, if you're into that. So you can search for particular topics using a podcast app. Or as I said, you can search for a particular podcast name if you know it, right from the podcast apps. You can also access our podcast from our podcast website, which is brand new. The website address is letstalkaboutat.com. And that will bring you to the podcast website where you can, there's links to subscribe in your particular podcast app. You can listen to every episode on that website as well. And, but the easiest way to actually listen to a podcast is to use any of the digital assistants to play it for you. So the Amazon Assistant, I don't want to say its name because I don't want to wake anyone's up. The Google Assistant, if you have a Google Home, or Siri. So if you have an iPhone, you have Siri. If you have an Android phone, you have Google Assistant, and you might have an Amazon device in your home or a Google Home device in your home, and you can speak to those assistants and ask them to play the particular podcast. So as an example, I would activate my digital assistant, by saying its name, and then I would say, play the Let's Talk About Assistive Technology podcast. So what you want to do is you want to tell it to play something, and then you want to give it the name of the podcast, and then you want to add in the word podcast at the end. This way the assistant knows that you're referring to a podcast. Does that all make sense? Is there any questions about that? Maddie, if you can.
This is going to be new to a lot of people, so keep
The host
that in
has
mind.
unmuted all participants.
I have
Mute.
unmuted
Currently
everybody.
unmuted. Button.
You want to ask questions?
There's a
Elliot.
bunch of people muted still.
Yes, yeah. So with the podcast, I like it because you can kind of get up to date information about a specific phone or whatever topic that that person is choosing to talk about. So it's kind of a way. One of my colleagues mentioned, instead of kind of reading the manual or something, you may be able to find out something through the podcast. So.
Elliot,
Well, with your device, which we're not saying their names to wake them up, will it also let you know when there's a new updated podcast like it does on your phone itself?
No, the digital assistants won't tell you when there's a new one. You'll have to, weekly or whenever the podcast is distributed, you'll have to ask for it every time. A podcast app on your phone, however, will tell you when one is available. And we're actually also doing text message notifications as one of many of you, I'm sure, in this class got my text message notification this afternoon about this session. And we're also doing podcast notifications as well. So if you're interested in that, we can sign you up for that.
Yeah. Is that going to be all in an email with all that information? Can it be?
that is sent out once a week. It's in an
Okay, and it has it in there, all the websites and all the things?
The email includes any topics that are coming up in the next week, as well as the login information for those meetings, the sign in and phone call in if you're a phoner.
How about the podcast?
Yeah, does it have the podcast link? Or
there is emails that go out about the podcast as well. Yeah.
Yes, the Friday outreach emails include information for the fundamentals, let's talk, and then at the very bottom, there's always a link to the podcast.
Okay. Thank you. I'll have to look at it in more detail.
Yeah, that's another good way to access that information.
Yeah.
I just want to say it's a great podcast. I've listened to all episodes. You know, for many people, it's not easy to go and read up on editorials or blogs, and Wendy and Elliot do a great job where they talk about a lot of different subjects and different things that you may not hear of on the news or through some of your other channels. So it's a great way to just stay up to date with what's going on in the world of assistive technology.
Yeah, and just to dive a little deeper into what we talk about in the podcast, we talk about all technology that has to do with being blind or visually impaired. So we've talked about updates to the iPhones and some of the enhancements that were made to the assistive technology on it. We've talked about audio descriptions in movies. We've talked about different ways of managing your passwords with a vision impairment. So everything in the podcast is focused on assistive technology, but specifically the blind and visually impaired community. So information that we think is necessary for everyone to know, and the latest news and all that stuff, but it's all geared towards the blind and visually impaired.
Are there any questions about the podcast? I know, Elliot, you didn't want to demonstrate it, but I kind of want you to.
I can.
Do you have a home device in there?
I can use my iPhone.
Awesome. All right, so
Let's
this is
see.
how you would ask to pull up the podcast. If you have a smart device, an iPhone.
Hopefully I don't activate anyone's button. Hey Siri, play the Let's Talk About Assistive Technology podcast.
Playing podcast Let's Talk About Assistive Technology podcast, hosted by Elliot Natale and Randy Reed. Now, let's get this party started.
I love the music.
I can keep it
I
going.
like the music.
We have great music.
Thank you.
Elliot, you look like you're so proud. Look at that face of his. It's like,
I love the music. Yeah.
Elliot, how do you get the different episodes?
So your digital assistant will play the latest episode, and you can ask it to play the previous episode. But if you want to listen to all the episodes, you have to use a podcast app or use the website.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on, Elliot.
You have, I'm sorry, did you say this already? You have 4 podcasts that you recorded?
We have 4 episodes right now. There's a few that are in the can that are being edited, and another one is going to be recorded tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah, and we are a lot of our Let's Talk technology sessions that we have, which will be on Thursdays, are going to be released as the podcast as well.
Very cool.
Nice.
Thanks for spending time with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting everybody. Have a good one.
Bye, Elliot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so that was probably a surprise for some of you. We didn't exactly announce that Elliot was coming on to teach us about that, but hopefully you learned something about podcasts. We are going to shift brains into orientation and mobility, and we have our certified O&M specialist, Latricia. Hi, Latricia.
Hello.
Hi, tell us about yourself. I know most people know you, but just in case.
Oh my goodness. I've only been doing this for how many months now? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
my name is Latricia, and I am one of the orientation mobility specialists at the Lighthouse. I've been with the Lighthouse, it'll be 11 years this year. And I am also a vocational rehabilitation manager as well. So today's session, actually, it'll be myself, and I have a co-host as well with me. But we will be talking about how to use your phone for orientation and mobility, okay? So using your phone, of course, will involve learning about some different apps that are available to help you safely navigate. So as it relates to orientation and mobility, the AT piece of learning to use an app, we kind of go hand in hand together. So, so you may have a person that's participating in orientation mobility training, but also want to learn how to use, certain apps that can help you get around safely. So that's where the AT department will kind of come in, and we can kind of what we call co-teach, where I'm working on those mobility skills, and the AT instructors are working on the AT piece of that. So we kind of, again, co-teach together. So today we're just going to talk about how using your phone can actually help you navigate, make you become more independent, and just make you feel safer as you navigate, and especially if you're navigating in places that you're not familiar with. So I have my co-host on with me today. I have my co-host on with me today, Yakub. And Yakub is the Assistant Technology Manager. So we will be kind of tag teaming today to talk about different apps that clients can use to help you navigate. And we'll just kind of hit on several different apps today. And then probably what we'll do is after the session, we'll kind of take a poll and see which apps, people are interested in hearing more things about, because you can actually spend a whole hour just talking about one app, itself. So we'll take a poll after the end of the session to kind of just get an idea of what apps, people may want to hear more about, and we can definitely try to set that up for a future date to kind of expand more on that particular app. But there are so many apps out there that can help a person that's blind or visually impaired, navigate the environment. And one of the good pieces to that is that it gives, you as a person that's blind or visually impaired, a little bit more independent. And, hopefully with having that little bit more independent, that will, force you or cause you to get out and navigate and move around the environment a little bit more. So, Yakub, if you want to just kind of briefly introduce yourself to everyone, and then we'll get started on talking about some apps. And you can ask questions along the way if you like as well.
So thanks, Latricia. So my name is Yakub Augustine. I am the technology manager with Lighthouse in Sarasota. As Latricia mentioned, I work with the AT team, Randy and Elliot. And today what we'll be discussing are some of the common, what you can call intelligent apps for guidance and navigation. And many of you have heard of some of the more famous ones. I know that there's callers in this meeting that have used some of these. So some of the more common ones we would use are the ones that you may or may not have heard are Seen AI, there's Blind Square. Some of the ones used internationally are Lazarillo and Right Hair, RIGHTHEAR. And then there's other ones, that are used for just what you could say recognition, Be My Eyes. So I know some of you, as I said on the call, have used these, and later I'll open up time for questions and comments. Mm-hmm. So some of the more famous ones, as I mentioned, are Lazarillo. Has anyone here used this one? It is available on the iOS and Android.
The host has unmuted all participants. Mute currently unmuted button.
So before anyone answers that question, how many people in the session today use a smartphone? And you just raise your hand if you currently have a smartphone. Or if you're not on camera, can you say, I have one?
I have one.
Okay, so it looks like most people in the session today have a smartphone. So that's great. That's a start.
It is. So for these apps, they do require the use of a smartphone. Some are compatible with both operating systems, your Android or iOS. And when I refer to Android, I mean phones that would be such as your Samsung or LG phones. And when I mention iOS, that would be your iPhone or iPad devices. So one of the apps for, you could say, guidance and navigation that's used internationally and also that's available in English and Spanish is Lazarillo. It's what you would call an intelligent application orientation guide for the blind and visually impaired. And it allows you to have greater interaction with your environment directly from your cell phone. And the benefit is that it provides you, just as you would hear with voice assistant voiceover, it provides you with voice to give you information for your places of interest. So one of the benefits of this is that if you're out and you're out in the city, if you're out at a public establishment like McDonald's, you're able to navigate with it telling you exactly how many feet ahead of you the counter is, the table. And the way it works and is programmed is that it's pretty much giving you information also regarding anything that would be to your current location. So if I would, for example, use it on my phone, I'm able to install it on my Android device from the Play Store. I installed it and I opened it. So at the top of the application, I can hit Enable Location.
You are on 8,949 White Sage Loop, Bradenton, FL 34,202.
So it right now tells me where my current location is, and then I'm able to search or explore for nearby hotspots or anything that's accessible location. And that can be a bus station, a cafe, any restaurant. So if I, for example, search for the Wells Fargo that's next to me, once I go ahead and search for this, I'm able to tap and select it. And then it tells me right now that I'm 1.4 miles away from it. And if I choose the option track this place,
Tracking started.
it starts the
We're on
tracking.
8,949 White Sage Loop, Bradenton, FL 34,202.
And
Your
it gives me
destination is 1.4
different
miles to your right.
options, just as if you would choose Google Maps. So Google Maps is one of your, you can say, better known default applications for navigation. So you have options for walking, bus, car, and even Uber. And if I would select, for example, walk, and it would ask me to choose the app, Lazarillo, it's able to load the route.
On the town center, Pequot.
So that's just a really brief example of it, but pretty much it is one of the, I said, better known ones used internationally. And what's more often used, or one of the, I would say, most widely used accessible GPS apps is Blind Square. So with Blind Square, it was developed for the blind, deafblind, and partially sighted. And now how Blind Square works is it's actually paired with what you would call third-party navigation software. And with Blind Square, it also has what you would call the self-voicing app. So you're able to hear the detailed points of interest, intersections, and the whole purpose of these navigation and GPS apps is so you can be safe, both outside and inside. So one of the things is, as I mentioned, how Blind Square works is after determining your location, it gathers information about your surroundings on Foursquare and OpenStreetMap. So Foursquare, for those of you who are not familiar with it, Foursquare is what you would call a social networking service, and it's available on your smartphones, iPhone or Android, and I believe even Blackberries, but those have become a little bit obsolete now. And how it works is you download it if you're on a Android device from the Play Store, if you're on Android from the App Store, and then after you download it, you're able to then, you can say, find friends in your contacts and even in Facebook. So
Cam has left the meeting.
So that's a part of it, how you could connect with friends. And then other parts of it are where you can check in. So every time you visit a business or attraction, you can check in, and then this app will pull up a list of nearby services. So it's a great tool to use, a Foursquare, and as I mentioned, Blind Square is working with that. And the benefit is of, you could say, Blind Square from working with Foursquare and OpenStreetMap, it gives you what you can say a lot more up-to-date information. So with, your other GPS or navigation apps, they're pretty good at, for example, if you're traveling, I know if there's construction or accident, Google Maps will indicate that. But say if there's a city block or if there's a change in information on a restaurant, that information will, you can say, not always be available. So with Blind Square, it does use what you call algorithms to determine what information is useful for you. And for navigation, it has a feature where if you shake your device, you're able to hear the current address and then details of the near around you.
So, Yakub, you said if you shake your phone?
Yes, that is one of the features of Blind Square. And how it works is, for the voiceover part, Blind Square uses voices, and these are available in different languages. And with the use of voiceover with Blind Square, it'll announce information about your environment. And that could even be if you don't have the device in your hand, you can even have it tucked away for what you call a hands-free experience. So it's a great application to also use with social media. And as I said, you're able to share your check-ins on Facebook and Twitter if you wish. And it's, I know, available in, I believe, up to, I know, 50 plus languages.
I would just like to add, and right here, Yakub is, I know in a previous session, I spoke with the group about a technique called spatial updating. And basically, that just simply means that as the client is moving through the environment, you know exactly where you are. So with using a GPS, that kind of makes it a little easier for you to keep track of where you are. So you're not, you know, you may not have to focus as much.
Correct. And I know, Lucretia, you know, when clients are out, you know, one of the things is it can be difficult, you know, when you're orientating, say, a new environment. So one of the other things that can be used is Be My Eyes. And I know that some of the callers in this session currently do use Be My Eyes. And this is available for the Android and iOS. Now, the difference with Be My Eyes is it is a free app, but what it does is it gets you connected with sighted volunteers or a representative for what you can call virtual assistants. And that's done through a live video call.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are there any comments on anyone who's used Be My Eyes?
No, but I've heard about it, Yakub.
Okay. And
You know, I've used both. I use both Be My Eyes and Blind Square. And, you know, they both have pros and cons. And Be My Eyes, you know, can help you find a door or whatever you're looking for. And then going back to Blind Square, you can program it to give you an alert ahead of time if you're riding the bus to know when to pull the cord when your stop is coming up. So you can program a lot of information into that and, you know, for set routes and things so you can get someplace, you know, the right way.
Yes.
That's
and
good.
that's a great point you brought up, because Tricia and I were talking about that, where it would be wonderful to be able to demo the apps one day when somebody is, you know, out in the public or even on a bus. So maybe for a future session.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool, Yakub, if we can get out in the community and then take this whole session to another level where we demo
Yes.
a lot of things that we're covering today.
And then another app I know that some people here do use is Seeing AI. So with Seeing AI, it's similar to the apps I discussed, but it's a little bit different, where it's more of a recognition software. So with Seeing AI, it's considered an intelligent camera app, and it pretty much provides you with information about who and what is around you. So how it works is that it's particularly useful for someone, you know, that is with a visual impairment, and you just hold up your phone and you're able to hear a description. So it's pretty much like asking a friend, you know, and instead of having someone actually there, you're able to hold your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's able to, you know, be used for free. And it's able to, you know, recognize different things such as text. And it's optimized to be used with voiceover, but you're able to hold your phone to documents and it'll speak text instantly. You're able to hold it up to a person's face and it'll recognize friends. It'll describe faces and emotions. Now, there is some setup required initially at the beginning. That is one thing I do want to indicate. But once it is set up and programmed, you're able to hold it up to also scan barcodes. And as well, you're able to put it to documents, brochures, and it's able to pretty much speak text instantly to you. And I know that it is one of the more widely recognized apps. It was, I know, recently honored by the American Council for the Blind and also the American Foundation for the Blind Helen Keller Achievement Award. And I know for the app, it is recommended for Seeing AI to be used on the iPhone 5C or 5S and later, but for performance or the best performance, we would recommend at least the iPhone 6S or SE and later models.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Gloria. Does the CNAI work on an Android?
No, it's available right now only for iOS. So
Is there
that
any?
would be your iPhone or iPad. For the Android, you know, as I said, you have different options. You have your Google Maps, which is by default there, but you also have the one I mentioned in the beginning, Lazarillo. And then there's other ones for Android. There's Get There, there's ID Pro. I know there's Right Here, which is RIGHTHEAR. It's one of the better ones used internationally.
Okay.
And that's one that I would say, you know, if you're interested in, you know, testing as well. I know there's one for also Android. It's Soundscape by Microsoft. That is another one. But for the iOS, I know the two main ones utilized are Blind Square. I know Ira can help as well at times in this situation. But for iOS, I would say Blind Square and Scene AI. And then for your Android, I would say your GPS by default in Google Maps, and then Lazarillo. And then there's, as I mentioned, Right Here. Now, are there any Android apps anyone currently uses besides the ones mentioned?
Muted all participants. Mute. Currently
I
unmuted.
use my Google Maps quite a bit.
And Google Maps is great. I've actually used it myself. I've used the walking function. You know, you're able to hear the audio. Does anyone currently use it? Any of the navigation apps? I know, like Melissa mentioned, when they're on the bus route.
Well, what's helpful with that is setting up markers for where you are on a bus or walking. But what can it do for you also is it can let you know where a bus stop is, and that way, and you know what time the next bus should be coming. So it can help you if you're going on a new route and haven't navigated there before, you know, before you've marked that location. So it can be helpful with that also. You have a feature that you can turn on or turn off that it will tell you, like, let's say you're downtown and, you know, you don't know what all these little shops are that you're walking by. And it can tell you as little or as much as you want. So if you turn on that feature, it can let you know what else is around you, that there's, you know, a bookstore, there's a writing store, there's a restaurant, you know, that it lets you know what else is around you. If that becomes too much, you can turn that feature off for a little bit and just, you know, go to your destination. But it can definitely help you if you've gotten off at the wrong spot or you're not sure where you are, that it certainly is a godsend when you get lost.
Exactly, Melissa. I would agree with that because as we're training as an O&M specialist, we always want the client to have a plan A, plan B, and even a plan C. So definitely when we're teaching bus travel training, that's one of the things that we definitely work on with the client is, let's just say if you miss your bus stop, then what will your plan be? You know, and so definitely having a GPS definitely play a big part of you learning to navigate if you have to get off at a spot that you're not familiar with.
I agree.
Well, or if you think that you've gotten off at the right stop, but it's somewhere else, so it's very helpful.
Right.
I will say it definitely, when you're using any kind of GPS, it's a battery drain. So if you go out, go fully charged. There are times if you know it's going to be a longer trip, you can shut it down for a little bit and then restart it, or carry a battery backup for your phone if you're going to be out all day and using it.
That's a good idea, Melissa, because it does drain your battery. And the nice thing about GPS too is that, let's just say that you did make a wrong turn, you know, while you're walking a route. You know, it just jumps in and it's going to redirect you, you know, to the point to where you are. So that's a good thing about GPS too. So you may feel like you're lost, but the GPS knows exactly where you are, and it's going to redirect you from that point, which is nice. So I know with some clients that I work with, you know, if they kind of get turned around on a route, you know, they kind of freak out about it or it causes anxiety for them. But I always try to explain to them that if you're using your GPS, that it's going to redirect you if you made a wrong turn. It's going to, redirect you from where you are. So that's a good thing about, using a GPS.
Well, the good thing is that you go out with a plan A, B, and C, and it might cause a little anxiety if you get turned around, but then it also gives you the opportunity to figure it out and get right back to the right place, and that can help, build your confidence to figure it out. And so you got lost once, that's fine. You figured it out. You can do it again.
Very good, Melissa. And that, again, I probably will always stress this, but as I mentioned before, as you go through O&M training, all the skills that we teach you and you learn, they build upon each other. So when I talked about problem solving and using things in your environment, to try to figure out, where you are, all of these things continuously come together as you are traveling. So you're going to continue to use those things. And, it's so important, again, to have good problem solving skills in case you do get turned around. Yes, you do have the GPS, which will help you figure your way out. But it still, it still doesn't take the place of having those skills already in place. I mean, we look at this like an enhancement. So just like we look at if you're crossing the street and there's a, signal there, we use that signal as an enhancement. Like I stressed, we want you to always know how to cross the street by using your surge of traffic. So if you have the APS there, that's just kind of an added bonus for you. And that's the same with GPS. You still want to have some of those basic orientation mobility skills down. And so basically once you start incorporating the GPS into your travel, that's just going to be an enhancement. So, a lot of times when clients come in for training, sometimes that's the first thing that they want to do is, I want to learn how to use the GPS, to get here, get there. And, so we always like to start with some of the basic things as it relates to orientation mobility to make sure you understand, whether you're walking north, south, east, or west, or you understand, that you're walking, a block or how long a block is. So you do still need to have some of those basic skills as it relates to orientation mobility down before you kind of move into using the GPS. And I know a lot of times, again, we, work together with the AT department. And a lot of times that's the first question that they will ask. Let's say, for example, if a client only comes to the Lighthouse for AT training and they say, I want to learn how to use the GPS. And that's the question that the AT instructor will ask them. Have you had orientation mobility training? And if the answer to that is no, more than likely that training is going to be put on hold as it relates to learning to use the GPS, because there are some basic things as it relates to mobility that you just need to know before you start totally relying on a GPS. So again, we work hand in hand together. Again, some co-teaching there. I know there have been times when Randy and I have did some co-teaching with the client that was kind of advanced as it relates to O&M training, and they were learning to use different apps for O&M. So we actually went out on a lesson together downtown Sarasota where the client was getting, training on how to use this app as well as working on her O&M skills. So again, those two things do go hand in hand, and you do need to have some level of O&M training prior to using, whatever app you may choose. And like Yakub mentioned, there's so many apps, to choose from. So you just have to kind of narrow it down and try to figure out what app is going to work the best for you. That's definitely something, the AT department can help a person with, as well as O&M specialists. We can kind of get you to a certain point, and then after a certain point, it's definitely out of our expertise. So we would definitely call in an AT instructor to assist us. But there's so many cool apps, and the great thing about it is, it gives you so much more independence when you know that there is something that you can rely on, especially when you're traveling in unfamiliar areas, and just the fact that you're able to, locate things and figure out what's in your surroundings without having to ask someone all the time. It just gives you a sense of greater sense of independence.
I agree. And I do want to add, Latricia, for those of us who are sighted, using these applications is much easier because we're able to see and tap and interact with it. But for those of you who would be using the, say, applications we mentioned, such as, Lazarillo, it is compatible with screen readers. So that would be your TalkBack or voice assistant screen reader on Samsung, and then VoiceOver on iOS devices. But there is a level of skill level you need to use TalkBack or VoiceOver, and that takes training. So part of the thing is that the application is available, but if you want to interact with it using VoiceOver or TalkBack, that will involve training.
Yes, good point. I know some clients, they come in again wanting, or they have heard about a lot of these apps and they want to learn to use the apps right away. So just like Yakub stressed, there is training involved with learning to use these apps. I mean, because they're things that you would just have to do. As it relates to O&M, there's training involved in learning various techniques. So it's not something that you can just kind of walk in and, start using right away. It does involve training. And I feel like once you get the basic down, would you agree, Yakub, that you can pretty much navigate through any app as it relates to navigating, like as it relates to VoiceOver and things like that, once you have the basic down?
I would say yes and no. I mean, the basics help, but there can be at times issues with certain applications, but most that are compatible, say with VoiceOver or TalkBack. I mean, if you have the training and if you have the gestures down, then yes, you're able to navigate through it. But you do need a decent skill level of using TalkBack or VoiceOver.
Mm-hmm. So other than Melissa in the session today, any other people in the session, have you had any experience with using any of these apps or GPS as you're out and about?
Unmuted all participants. Mute currently unmuted button.
Not yet.
Was that someone that said not yet?
Marty. No,
Oh, okay. Marty said not yet. Okay. Has anyone in the session today heard of some of the ones that he mentioned today that you can actually use?
No. No.
Never? Okay.
This is Kathy.
Yes.
A friend of mine uses Ira all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When she went up to the outlet mall in Ellington, she knew the store she wanted to go to, so she got out the Ira app, and it uses the camera on your phone, and you're connected to a person via a phone call. And they directed her right to the right store, got her in the door, got her to the department. And she's used it on a cruise ship and navigated the ship, effortlessly, really. So
yeah.
it is by subscription. It's not a free app.
Yes.
But,
yeah, and I think Ira is not cheap.
It's not, no.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah.
But they're working on getting some stores to have free Ira service, and I think you get 5 minutes free before they start charging you. So.
But your friend has had good experience with it. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, using Be My Eyes. And I know we've demoed that in our adjustment to vision loss class, and it is free. They are all volunteers. And I mean, it is less than, it may be 30 seconds that you're connecting with someone, and they're utilizing your phone camera. So you have it pointed toward something that you want to see. And so you don't lose your privacy. They're not looking at you unless you would turn the camera and want them to, ask about an outfit or something, but they've been prompt and courteous and, definitely give correct information. So for a free app, if you have a smartphone, I have had nothing but good service from them. And they're all volunteers.
Yes, I think
agree with
if
you.
I'm not mistaken, I think I was working with a client that uses Be My Eyes, and I think she mentioned that there are over a million volunteers that help callers. So a million people waiting to help you, and everyone that I've spoken with have had great things to say about Be My Eyes. Now, one thing that I know that the person will not do, let's just say if you're crossing a street and you're asking them like to help you cross the street, they're not going to tell you like it's safe to cross the street. So I want to make that very clear. They may say if a car is coming, but they will not say, okay, now you can cross. They legally they cannot do that. So that is one limitation as relates to having that live person there. They will not give you, they will not tell you when it's safe to cross the street, just because, it's illegal and it's for the liability.
I wouldn't even think to ask them for that.
I mean, I know one client, and the reason I know that because one client said they did ask a person to help them, and they couldn't help. They couldn't tell them when to actually cross the street, but they did. They were able to tell them that a car was coming, approaching them, but they couldn't tell them when it was safe. So I know that from person, actually speaking to a person that was using it, and she wasn't aware. She wasn't aware that they couldn't do that.
That's where your skills come in then when you're crossing the street.
Right. So again, O&M skills and your technology skills, they come together both. You're combining both of those skills. So again, it's important that you have that basic knowledge as it relates to O&M skills, and then you have the basic knowledge as it relates to assistive technology, because you're going to be using both of those skill sets together. But again, all of these are just enhancements to help a person, navigate.
And
and I would just say try to take advantage of a lot of the free apps. They're free.
Yes.
And even.
And I would say,
Eyes.
Sorry, Kathy. But I was just going to say with Be My Eyes, one of the also advantages is that it has partnered and it does work with Google and Microsoft. So if you have, for example, an Android phone or
particular app is going to work out for you.
An iPhone, you can talk to the assistant. That would be Siri on the iPhone or the Google assistant here, and you could say, "Hey Google, open Be My Eyes for volunteer."
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the other advantages to this as well. And I would suggest for those of you, if there's one app to try, definitely it would be My Eyes.
And those volunteers, they're trained.
Yes.
Because, they want to be competent and give out proper information the right way. So, it's not just some Joe Schmo answering the phone. It's a well-trained volunteer, which gives me more confidence when I'm using it.
Kathy, have you used one before?
I've used Be My Eyes, and I've tried Ira a couple times.
You tried what?
I've tried Ira.
Oh, Ira. Okay.
When we went to the FCB convention last year, Ira was free for the whole convention weekend, so you could use it to navigate around the hotel.
Oh, nice.
And that came in quite handy.
Yeah.
I did use my skills at night in the dark in an unfamiliar place, and I got where I was going.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kathy. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of times when we do go to conferences for our profession, we have people in our profession that are instructors that are blind and visually impaired, of course. And so a lot of times they have to have orientation mobility to learn to get around the hotels or wherever the conference, is held. So a lot of times when they're using a lot of their devices, they're able to navigate around the hotels independently, because no one has to really show them, because they have, they're using these apps or whatever device they're using. But that's a good point. A hotel could be challenging for someone to try to navigate around that's blind and visually impaired. And we see it all the time at conferences that we attend each year with our colleagues,
Yeah, because you want to know where the restaurant is, where the pool is, and if there's outbuildings, how to get there.
Right,
You
and
know,
how to get to
getting
your
from your room down to where a meeting is.
yeah, and how to get to your sessions or whatever. I remember, Randy would go to conferences with us, and that was one of the things I had to help him with, orientate him to the hotel, orientate him how, he was using his cane, of course, but, orientate him to where his sessions would be for the next morning. So, using an app in a setting like that could be very, very helpful.
I would recommend taking earphones or earbuds, because with the noise when you're out in public, whether it's, street noises or shopping noises or convention noises, to have your earphones in.
Right.
Hear it directly rather than, it makes it easier.
Well, I would jump in there and just say that if you can still plug in your earbuds on an older model, a lot of times people will just put one earbud in so that you're using your one ear to hear what's going around in your surroundings, and then using the one earbud so that you're listening to what directions you're getting. So you're still aware of your surroundings, but you're getting the information as well.
Right. That's a good suggestion, Melissa.
I really like that suggestion, because I feel like when you're out moving around, you have to use your auditory skills in a new place, getting directions from other people or gathering information around you. So that's a really good point.
And crossing streets. That's scary.
If you don't want to be under headphones that way.
Right. If you can't hear that traffic. So that is definitely a good suggestion.
I know other people have used those bone conduction, what are they called? Bone conductive headphones. You don't actually have your ears covered. It actually, the sound travels in through your temples, I believe.
No, it's like right behind your ear where it rests. At least that's what it looks like when I've seen people wear them.
It just feels like magic. Somehow the sound travels from the surface of your skin into your ears without
right into the brain.
Your ears. I don't know how it works. It's magical.
It's magic. Yeah.
That way you don't have a cord attached to your phone,
Right, exactly.
Well, you could use Bluetooth, but if someone didn't have that, that would be fine.
That's true. But they're just a good plan B, to have.
Yes. Yep, on your phone. I would agree.
This might be pretty advanced for some people. So if you were starting from square one, like you'd never used one of these before, what would you do, Latricia?
As it relates to an app?
Yeah, how would you get started in using an app?
You want to download it? even starting with downloading it?
No, I mean, it's my thought that you would maybe talk to an O&M specialist or AT specialist and get the right fit, or.
Right. Yeah. You want to figure out what are you planning to do? Where are you planning to go? Like Yakub mentioned, some apps are better if you're traveling.
Well, one of the first places to start is to look at the model of the phone, because these applications only support far back, certain models. And then you want to also look at what operating system you're using. Like, for example, for our Android devices, we recommend at minimum operating system 5.1 Lollipop. And then for iOS, I believe we recommend at least 8.0 operating system or later. Now, the newer, the better when it comes down to your smartphone and operating system. So it is very essential and important to make sure that you're staying up to date with your software version, and you're using a newer smartphone. We can say, if you plan to use these applications, because as Melissa mentioned, not only will it drain your battery, but it's going to tax your processor as well in the phone. So the older the device, the slower it's also going to work. Mm-hmm. So that would be the first place we would start, to make sure that it is compatible with your smartphone. And then from there, if you were to use the application with TalkBack, VoiceOver, or with any screen reading software, that will require a certain skill level as well.
Yes.
How long, like for example, if someone gets a new iPhone and they've not used an iPhone before, they need to get some layering skills first. So this person will have to get that AT training, learn how to use the basic functions of the phone before they can start exploring use of a GPS system. But it's sort of the same with O&M, right? Like you wouldn't want to just dive into GPS without getting the basic skills. So
Right.
this really is like a marriage of both skills. It's really cool.
Right. Yeah, and we have had clients that, signed up for training and they, they figured they could just go right to the GPS. But, there's so many skills in between before you even get to that point, So yes, you truly have to have that foundation first.
We're all quiet.
Yes. Is everyone there?
We are.
Yes.
Yeah, did everyone hear what I just said? I was saying that you do have to have those basic skills down first because, some clients do walk in training thinking they're going to start with texting, for example, texting my friend, and it's not, you have to get the basics down first. So sometimes, some clients may get upset, but when you kind of explain it to them and they understand why, then they understand and they're much better prepared for training.
This is probably why we have clients who stay on Lighthouse forever and ever, because all of these skills are so layering that
it is. It's not,
your goals just keep moving back
right.
because you add.
And it may appear simple, but it's not so simple. Because when we did our in-service with Randy, just learning to tap, that's a challenge for some people, and some people may not ever get the tap, So if you can't get the tap, you can't move on to, B, C, and D. So it is a process. So, we want clients to understand that also. Yes, we want you to use these technologies to enhance your independence, to enhance your travel, but we also want you to know that there are steps to getting you to where you need to be, and there's a process, even as it relates to O&M. And AT, when we combine our training, there's still steps that you have to take to get there. And if and other thing I want to stress too, with anything, if you put in the work and you work hard, you can get there, but you have to do your part also. Just like we mentioned, or I mentioned in AT training, you have to practice between the times we meet. The same thing for AT training. If you're learning something, you still have to put in the time and you still have to practice. It's no different. So I always tell a client, you determine how quickly you can move through training because, part of it is going to depend on you as well as the client. If you have a very motivated person that's ready to go, we have those in O&M, and I know Yakub, AT department probably have clients like that also. They're gung-ho, they want to get in, they give it their all, they practice, they want to meet as many times as they can, though that's how you advance your skills. So I would just say, if it's something you really want to learn, and even if you're not, so tech savvy, don't give up. Give it a try. And, you truly have to give it your best and give it your all. You have to put forth the effort. As an instructor, we're going to provide you with the knowledge and the training. But as a client, you have to also do your part as well.
I agree. And, one of the things is, the importance of using these applications or to start using assistive technology is, I know for some of you who have sight, it's still able to be where you can use your mouse, you can interact with your phone by tapping it. But, in the near future, if all sight is gone, as I was training a client other day, what I was talking about with him is what the plan is slowly to do is take away the dependability of the mouse. Because if you're in a situation where you cannot see the screen, whether that's on the computer or on the smartphone, you want to have training, or at least start training on using what you call accessibility software. So that would be your screen reader software, any magnification software, and etc. And as Latricia mentioned, there is a learning process. There's a learning curve. It takes time. The first few lessons will seem frustrating, but we, as a team, Randy, Elliot, and I, we all advise constant repetition, and we don't like to move so fast because you have to practice the same skill. And then when it comes down to, say, voiceover, there's certain ways you have to tap, say double tap, there's 2-finger swiping, there's the use of what you call the voiceover rotor, which works with your 2 fingers. And that's more detailed because the voiceover rotor adjusts settings such as, volume and your speech rate and the phonetics and just other, settings there, such as reading a punctuation. So that's a little bit more complicated, but you definitely want to start getting an idea of these applications and not being dependent on using the mouse or visually seeing the screen, because the whole importance we were trying to emphasize is how to use these if you do not have any sight.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's also important to reiterate that there isn't like an ideal candidate necessarily to use these. Latricia mentioned that you can do it. You have to put in the time and the work. So I'm sure there's people on this call who are feeling, I don't know what those words they're saying are. I don't even know what an app is. Maybe you were thrown off by Elliot at the beginning about podcasts. You don't know what podcasts are. So I don't want you to feel like this isn't for you. I think this is a great goal for anybody who's doing mobility and is interested in learning technology. Some people think technology is more work than it's worth, but when you have a visual impairment, it can be like, it can open your world. You can find support groups. You can use social media. You can communicate with family members by typing in words, so I do think it's a worthwhile endeavor no matter where you're at. Mm-hmm. But you do have to work the stages, we'll say, first.
You can find that coffee shop on your street.
Ooh, I like coffee.
It just opens up your world, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree. And with Maddie said, it's a great point where technology in general, especially the apps you can download on your computer or smartphone, they help you stay connected to family and friends. And I know there's clients who never used, say, Zoom in the past, and now they're using Zoom to speak to their son or daughter or anyone in their family. So it's just great to be able to use technology or applications because they have great real world use as well as ways to stay socially connected.
I would say we've got some Zoom professionals on here now. We've got a lot of people who've been signing in every day.
That's good. I had to learn Zoom also. So this whole experience was new for me as well. I had no clue about using Zoom. So kudos to everyone. And, we don't know how long we'll have to use Zoom. So, we appreciate everyone at least trying and, participating because we all had to jump in and try to learn all of this stuff rather quickly.
Talk to a lot of people who really have been enjoying these Zoom sessions. A lot of people want us to keep having these, even if we do have in-person sessions again. I think it's an easier way to reach people, and you can have people who are sort of low tech, who are on home phones, and then higher tech if you're on any kind of video conferencing device.
Yeah, it's been really fun to me also. And we definitely have been able to reach a lot of people, during this critical time, which is so important.
Well, I'm going to open up. I'm going to unmute everybody in the case that anyone has any questions. I do want to mention it's 2:00, so if you have to scram, that's okay.
Has unmuted all participants. Mute currently unmuted button.
Any comments or questions for Latricia or Yakub?
Can I say something about foundation?
Do it.
Yes.
I think you're right with, getting a really good foundation on the basics of either mobility or technology, because as you go along, you can learn more skills, and it's not a scary thing. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I can see how that relates, and I can learn that easily. And the same thing with technology. Okay, you start with learning your phone, and then as you learn more apps, you see the similarities and can pick out the differences. And it's a lot easier to learn if you've got a good foundation. It's like a building. It stands forever.
Right. Everything builds upon each other. Yep. So using your iPhone, not iPhone, but using and device for orientation mobility is great. I encourage it, but you do have to have those skills.
Now there are low-tech options. Do they still make those low-tech GPS devices? Like I can't even remember.
Oh, like Garmin?
It's like the Trekker?
Yeah, Trekker. Oh,
I think they do, but I'm not sure how many people are still using it. I think they are still available.
Those were low tech, but they were complicated. So I feel like if you're able to use one of those, you probably could use
an app is simple.
Your phone, yeah. I think they still make those though.
Well, the Victor Reader Stream comes with a GPS now.
You have a question? You're muted.
Kathy said the Victor Reader Stream comes with a GPS.
Oh, okay.
One of the models.
She's muted. She's trying to talk.
Now,
from Highlands County.
Okay, yeah.
Someone here.
Can't remember her name.
I think. No.
There we go. We got
She's
you.
still muted.
She's still muted.
What? No, she's
not Juanita, but.
Oh.
But while we're waiting for her to get unmuted, one thing I also wanted to point out is, as Latricia mentioned, there's a foundation, there's a skill level. We obviously don't advise you to download one of these apps and get on a bus and go through your route, but once you have a foundation with these, it's going to make things much easier and less intimidating and scary when you're taking those bus routes or you're taking a commute someplace. And the great thing is, as Melissa mentioned, you can save routes, you can save and have settings programmed in. But for these applications, I did want to point out that if you're out in public, not at home or in a place with a Wi-Fi network, you will need the use of cellular data. So you will need a cellular data plan with your smartphone.
That's a good point to bring up. Yeah, cool.
And
that's why those unlimited plans are nice.
Yes, and depending on your data usage, these applications can consume a lot of data. So that is one thing to pay attention to.
What I would think would be interesting to talk about too is reliance on these. Whether you have vision or you are a non-visual traveler, have you ever found yourself relying on GPS and then your phone dies?
I could totally agree with you.
You need to have a backup. You have to have that extra battery, like Melissa.
That's your plan B, C, and D.
Or you need to keep those mobility skills up to snuff. You have to remain oriented when you're walking, so that when you inevitably lose battery power, you'll be able to get around safely.
Yes, that's a good point, Maddie. Things happen. So again, you want to have. Are you trying to speak? Out in Highlands County, I can't remember her name.
Oh yeah,
Patty.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Patty, sorry, Patty. Did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to tell you I would not be with you tomorrow.
Oh.
Because I have to go get my eye shot. But I'll be back with you Monday.
Okay.
As usual.
See you soon, Patty.
Thank you, Patty, for joining us today.
Thank you, for being there.
Yeah.
I'll listen to the end of the program.
Okay, but Maddie, that's a good point, because even like in the car, if you're driving using your GPS, something can happen, and if you have no clue about where you're going, you're totally lost. You're totally lost.
I've had that happen, and I've had to pull over and charge it and wait for my phone to.
Right, and so a lot of times what I have done is I've kind of looked at the directions, before leaving, just so I can get an idea of where where I'm going. Because I've had that happen to me before. I completely lost power, and I'm like, okay, I kind of remember, it was turn on Green Street, then turn on Maple Street. So I kind of, planned ahead to kind of see the whole route.
That's probably good planning anyway, whenever you're going somewhere new, whether you are a low vision traveler or, you're driving your car, you probably should preview the route. Do we always do that? No.
No.
Nope.
Yeah, and anything can happen.
Well, and if we go back to basics, if I've learned a route and I know the different turns and, if there's a certain curve and then a right turn and the next step is, next stop is yours, you don't have to use blind square all the time. So, it can help guide you in different situations. But I will say you do need to stick with your basics too and know, what your spatial awareness is, when you've done this turn and that curve and, where you are. So it's a combination of both. And, not to give up your basics that you learned. Those are still very important.
And I feel like most of the training that we do at the Lighthouse is confidence building and also creative solution finding, problem solving.
Yes.
Problem
solving.
So that's half of what we're training people is when you get into this issue, what are you going to do?
Right, and that happens so often on mobility lessons where a client they're learning a route, and I know that they know the route, but they may get in a situation, and the first thing they'll say is, "Latricia, am I going the right way? Did I make the right turn?" And I'll instantly say, just pretend I'm not here. You have to figure it out, yourself.
That's tough.
And they're able to work through it,
Bandwidth is low.
They're able to work through it. So problem solving skills are so critical.
Well, does anybody have any more questions about GPS and apps on smartphones?
Mobility, how they're combined together?
We've got two major professionals here on the line to answer any questions you might have about those topics. And if not, please stay on the line. Terry, are you here? I'm going to have Terry, I may have just thrown her under the bus, tell us about the new login information for next week. But thank you very much, Latricia and Yakub. Again, I'm always impressed by our orientation and mobility Thursdays.
1-800-340-4947 has left the meeting.
Did you hear me?
Who left the meeting?
Well, now their phone number was announced over there.
Thanks everyone for joining the orientation mobility
Thank you.
Thank you.
app session today.
Come back tomorrow, everybody. We're doing stress management. We're going to talk about art therapy. And then for our support group at 2:15, we are talking about confidence in ourselves and instilling confidence in others.
Yay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you are someone who wants to sign up for the cell phone, the text alerts, you can stay on the line and we'll get your information.
And for the podcast alert.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, there's lots of options.
I know. We're so fancy.
We'll get to you. You're going to hear about what we're doing.
We will keep in touch with you.
Oh, Terry, are you on the line? Would you tell us about the new meeting ID?
Okay, starting on Monday, June 1st, we'll